Political playbooks are full of these tried and true strategies, right? But what if one of the most fundamental ones, how you engage Black voters, is just completely broken? Today, we're digging into an analysis that says it's time for a radical rethink of that entire approach.
And this quote right here, it really gets to the heart of it. It highlights a massive difference in approach. Is engagement just some last-minute task you check off a list, or is it a real long-term relationship you gotta build? That difference is at the core of everything we're about to unpack.
So, okay, why are these old methods just not working anymore? Well, the source we're looking at argues it's because they're purely transactional. They're built on these symbolic gestures that happen way too late in the game and don't have any real substance for the community. So let's break this down. You've got two totally different models of engagement here. On one side, you have the transactional stuff. The last-minute church visit, the photo op at a festival. But the source is pushing for a huge shift to what it calls relational politics. This is about actually building bridges and showing up consistently, not just when you need the votes.
And this whole transactional thing, it's really built on some pretty old, outdated ideas. So now we're going to dig into two big political myths that this analysis says are just getting in the way of real engagement.
Okay, so here's the first big idea that gets challenged. For decades, right, this strategy has kind of been based on this belief that Black voters are just one single unified group. But is that actually true? And the source comes back with this really direct, powerful answer, just this one sentence. Man, it just cuts through a huge, long-standing assumption. The argument is that this view isn't just wrong, it's kind of disrespectful because it ignores the complex, issue-based decisions that voters are making. So if it's not just about identity, then what is it about? Well, the point here is that these voting decisions come down to a much deeper set of questions. Does this candidate get our real-world issues? Do they show genuine respect? And, this one's huge, have they been around consistently, not just when it's politically convenient? All right, that brings us to myth number 2. And this one is all about timing and strategy. There's this old idea that if an election looks like it's in the bag, you can just wait to engage with certain communities until the very last minute. But here's the thing. That whole idea just ignores how much politics has changed. I mean, the days of those landslide victories, they're kind of over. Today's elections are incredibly close, often decided by these razor-thin margins, and that completely changes the game. So what happens when you smash these old, outdated strategies up against the reality of today's politics? Well, the source points to something pretty troubling. This growing wave of disengagement, and it's framed as a protest of absence. The analysis zeroes in on two key groups here, African Americans and voters under 45. And what's really important to get is that they're not just switching sides, they're checking out of the whole process. They're just opting out. Wow, I mean, that is such a powerful way to reframe what it means not to vote, right? It's not about apathy. It's an active political statement, a choice that's made through absence. So you might be wondering, how does a voter get to that point? Well, the source really lays out a clear path. It all starts with feeling taken for granted. From there, you start to see all the outreach as just performative and inconsistent. And the final step? A values-based decision to protest by not showing up at all. It's a total rejection of the options on the table. Okay, let's tie this all together. Let's connect this protest of absence back to the reality of modern elections. Because in an age where things are decided by super thin margins, this trend, it becomes a huge deal. I mean, look at this. When a race is this close, the decision of any group to just stay home can literally decide who wins. Every single vote suddenly has this enormous mathematical weight. And really, at the end of the day, it often comes down to just a few thousand votes. That's it. That can be the whole ballgame. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now what's the solution? The analysis shifts gears here, moving away from the issue and toward a whole new framework, one that goes beyond just simple outreach and gets into real accountability. According to this source, a modern, effective strategy really has to be built on these 3 things. It's about actually respecting what voters are concerned about, which, means you have to listen instead of just assuming you know. It's about being consistent, showing up even when the cameras aren't there, and it's about being held accountable for the promises you make. It sounds simple, but it is a massive shift from that old transactional model. And this isn't just theory. The source actually points to a real-world example of this model in action, the Texas Progressive Policy Institute for African American Engagement, or TPPI. It's held up as an organization that's helping candidates do the really hard work of building these genuine coalitions.
And this thing is getting bigger. The source talks about a specific initiative called Black Activate the Vote 2026. It started off in Texas, but now it's expanding into 19 other states, including really key places like Georgia and North Carolina. So this shows a really clear, practical application of these ideas on a national level.
Okay, so this all brings us to the final and maybe the most important takeaway. The analysis really boils everything down to one fundamental choice that every campaign has to make.
And look, the stakes here could not be higher. The source is basically saying this whole demand for accountability, it's not just talk. It's predicting that the consequences of this choice, good or bad, are going to show up in the actual results of the November 2026 elections.
And so we're left with this really powerful and, yeah, pretty uncomfortable question that the source poses. When you look at everything, the razor-thin margins, the growing number of people checking out, is it really worth it for any campaign to just assume loyalty instead of doing the hard work to actually earn trust? The answer to that question, it might just shape our entire political future.